Welcome to the Dixie Doggers podcast. We're here to share knowledge and heritage. We hope y'all enjoy. Southern Cross. It's the best cut gear in the business. We run it on our dogs. Hit up Dave Williams at Southern Cross Cut Gear. Go to www.hogdoggear.com. If you're looking for Brahma and Brahma Cross cattle, Marc Rankin with the Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company, he specializes in them. He is the man for the job. He's based out of Oglethorpe County, Georgia, and you can contact him at 407-832-2077.
If you're buying or selling land, farms, or hunting property, these folks know land. Phil Wilson with UC Hunting Properties, 678-791-3483.
Hello, everybody out there in the wallygagging, hog dogging, coon dogging, bay dogging world, or whatever the hell you're doing with your dogs. We love you, and we're here to stay, and we're still in your ear. And we got a guest with us tonight, and I have been anticipating this since we have started this crazy stuff that we're doing on this podcast. I have always wanted to get somebody on here from another country. So we had some guys come and visit while we were at Uncle Earl's. They came and did a tour of the U.S. They went hunting. They came visit Uncle Earl's, and we got to meet them. And they're the first guys that had the blackmouth curves imported into Australia. And so, without further ado, this is Baden Crittle. Baden, how are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good, Joey. Good, Joey. Good. Good to talk to you again after Uncle Earl.
Yeah,
it was quite an experience, and still coming down from the high, I think.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think about the whole, just the whole general? We'll go over the Uncle Earl's thing right now. What did you think about the whole deal about the bay pen and the way that we work the dogs here?
Well, after about 20 years of waiting to get over there and see Uncle Earl's and experience, it was, it sort of blew our expectations, and it was just an amazing thing to see. It's uniquely Australian. Uniquely American. I can say that we can't do anything like that in Australia. And to see, what was your estimate? Maybe 1,000 dogs at that one showground.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah,
was just
750 dogs ran.
Yeah, I think there were 750 dogs that ran in the entries, and there was another 300 or so on the outside of the gate. Yeah, 1,000 to 1,500 maybe, even. It's a lot of dogs.
It's just amazing. Like we don't have anything in Australia here that it sort of, in the pigging or working dog cattle industry or anything that would be able to pull that many dogs together, and to see so many bloodlines and types of dogs and people, there were some interesting characters, the amount of people that are there. And, I full credit to Jake for, being able to run it how he does, and
yes,
and for everyone that turns up to see it.
So who do you think was the most interesting character there? Or one of the
Where do I start? Buddy. I mean, look, everyone's just so welcoming,
Yeah.
Being Australian, I don't know, it gives us a bit of an in with everyone. But the moment we arrived there, we sort of walked across the grounds, and Rusty was there. Rusty Mashaw that we went hunting with earlier on was there, and we didn't actually catch up with him, but there was already people just from a bit of Facebook and a bit of social media go, oh, that must be the Australians.
Yeah.
And we went straight past the Cajun Cooking Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're a couple of big characters, them fellas. And
they are.
Yeah, and then, you sort of just watch the people as the dogs started coming in. And, yeah, Randy Earl, he's a pretty cool little character.
Mm-hmm.
With Goose. We sort of went straight to him, and he's obviously doing pretty well with the dogs he's got, but he's also a pretty good little character.
Yeah.
And probably can't go past Slick Willie and his moonshine, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Slick's going to keep you busy with that.
Yeah, and I see him run a few dogs, and so he's in amongst it all. So
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a good time. We were really glad that you guys came and visited. You know, it's always good to have somebody like that. It opens a new light on it for other people, and you know, in that way, in the future, this could bring a whole nother group of people to show up. You know, more people give it a chance and to come see it in person and how it is, because it really is it really is a big event. It's a good time.
Well, it's obviously getting bigger and bigger. Like
Yes.
if you know the sort of advertisement of it, I would say is a little bit minimal on sort of social media and all of that sort of stuff. But I mean, just everyone knows about it. Once we got there, people sort of started saying, "Oh, why are you here?" Well, you know, Uncle Earl's. You know, you don't really hear much about it in Australia. There's the odd person that hears about it, and you know, probably a bit like us that, oh, you know, one day we might go, or but you know, it's growing. Yeah, in my opinion, like that, the word of mouth of it's growing, and you know, it's something that's you know, very unique to a hogging. You know, for you guys hog hunting and us over here pig hunting. That I don't know how you can promote it bigger, but you know, the atmosphere there is great. Everyone that's there is great, and the dogs are. It's enjoyable to watch them.
Yep. It's one of those deals. Like I said, it's going to continue to grow, I'm sure, and you know, it's maybe we'll see you guys there again. When did you say you were coming? 27 coming back?
Yeah, so that is still the plan. I did tell everyone there that I was coming back, and I probably maybe should have kept my mouth shut. But there's probably a lot of expectation now that there is someone from Australia or international coming back to compete.
Yeah,
it's been on my to-do list for at least 10 years.
I didn't know it was going to be a secret, Baden, or I wouldn't have said anything.
No, it's all good. I told everyone there, and they're all like, "Yeah, we definitely want you back." But I don't know. You guys are uniquely American as well, and you know it's called the world. You know, there's the World Championship hog baying. Mm-hmm. Is it the world when no one else is there? Do you need someone else international there to compete for it to be a world championship? I think so.
I agree. I agree.
I'll come over and have a go.
Mm-hmm.
I mightn't win, but I'll have a go. It'll be international. It'll be a world event then, because there'll be someone else from around the world there. So,
now
that might upset a few Americans if I might upset a few Americans if I win.
I don't know. There's going to be a lot of people that's going to have. I mean, if Randy wins, everybody's upset anyway. Yeah. So, I mean, it wouldn't really be any different. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be like, well, we still didn't win. And so they're going to be upset no matter what. But at the end of the day, everybody's still going to drink moonshine, and we're going to sit around a fire and listen to somebody play the guitar and have a good time.
Yeah, no, that's what it's all about. The atmosphere there was great, you know. And my cousin was with me, and he just kept saying, you know, I've found my real home and my real people. And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming back. Yeah. I've already looked at my flights for 2026. So
I know when your cousin, he said, Joey, this is the most redneck thing that there could be. I was like, yeah. He said, I freaking love this. I said, I do too. Yeah, I knew he was at home then. I was like, he's home. He's home.
Found a new place in the world.
Yeah.
And so I'll put a bit of sponsorship up next year. I'm hoping to talk to Jake, and I'll probably put a bit of sponsorship up next year, and you know, just keep in contact, and 2027 look out and see if I can get back there with some dogs.
We'll be back after a quick break.
A quick thanks to supporters of the Dixie Doggers podcast: Southern Cross Cut Gear, UC Hunting Properties, Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company, Animal Housing Solutions, Boars N Broads, Ada Y Transport, Crockett Taxidermy and Processing.
That's going to be awesome. You know, now doing that, just the process of that in itself, it's a big process. First off, you guys don't do the bay pens and stuff there in Australia. So you got to contend with that. You don't have that style of dog. You know, that you don't have one of those. You don't have bay dogs like we do you?
No, not per se.
Looser bay dogs,
No. So what we breed, like my blackmouth curs, looking at what was going into the pen at Earl's, mine are too rough, too grabby. I see a lot of the Woods dogs, that stockman, what they call it, the
sportsman class.
Sportsman's class. Like a lot of them dogs were obviously all the hunted, really hard hunted dogs. A lot of them were going in, probably being a bit too grabby. And I would say mine are going to be exactly the same. So, bailing wise, or you say baying, we say bailing. So bailing wise, I've got a bit of a line that does actually get back a little bit further. We call just a little bit of a loose bail, but that's still only if the pig's sort of big enough. So yeah, it's something that I'm really going to have to concentrate on. I've gone through the process of setting up a practice pen so that I can do it. Try and get a couple of pups. My idea is to basically probably breed a litter in the next month. Pick 4 or 5 out of the litter, try them. Try and get to a point where I can say, yeah, these ones might sit back a little bit further. And not go catching the pig. But in reality, it's going to be probably pretty tough. You guys seem to, I don't know about in the baying or that sort of, even out in the bush when you catching pigs, or if you're in the pen, you guys seem to obviously do a lot more toning and using the collar more than what we probably would here. But I don't know if that's something that I would use to, try and back the dogs up to start off with. It's something I personally don't do a lot of. Like I did hear while I was over there that, you do use a lot of the toning to get your dogs back or call them back, and I just haven't done it.
We've seen that.
That may be something. Yeah.
We've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah,
people that used the handhelds to do that. We
have some that are vocal.
I was fixing to say we've had some that in the past. I guess we could have done it with that, but we just bred them to stay back further. We selectively bred. It took several years to get to the point to say, okay, this is a good bay dog. He's a looser dog, and he's not going to get in there and get too grabby. Even though sometimes they have to learn the hard way. They go in there and get too grabby, and then they get their ass whooped, and then they stay back a little more.
Yep.
And I would rather the dog do that than for me to try to back it up with the handheld, because I don't want to mess the dog up.
No, it just breaks that whole connection.
Yeah. Now there's some people that can do it, and they know how to do it. I'm not one of those people.
Yep.
And so
I certainly don't. I certainly don't do it. And I have bred a really tough line of back. The main sire that we use, Crittle Triggers Happy, was just an absolute machine catching clean skin bulls. You guys seen the video.
Yeah.
He was catching bulls and running onto bulls like a pig dog. And that's a heavy line that we've got now. And I know that I've purposely bred that sort of catch and that tough dog, and then going over to the States and sort of seeing how you guys have got them, really loose bail, sitting back. It's going to be a real challenge to turn that into a bay pen dog, but I'll have a go. I'll find a way. There's, it's only training, and there's always a way to get through to a dog so he understands that what his job is and what he needs to achieve, and I've just got to find that.
There you go. We have some of the blackmouth curs. They don't bay. They're more like your dogs, like the jughead that we've got. He's 2 years old now, but I thought he was actually going to back up and bay some, but we carried him the other night, and he just goes in there head up. He runs on him, and he doesn't back up at all, and that's fine. But we use those dogs. We use 2 or 3 of those together, and we don't mix them in with the looser dogs. We have two separate packs of dogs. I think that's the best way that we found to run ours. But I don't know if I could take one of those dogs and make him back up. I'd be really interested to see how you do this, because I ain't no doubt that you can, because you have stock dogs as well, right?
Yeah, so we we've got 20 odd border collies, and I could probably put any of them into a pen. I can actually move. When I was breeding pigs, I could move a lot of the pigs around with my border collies. Just walk them in, bit of a nip, sit them, back them up, all that sort of stuff. I've been down the process of actually trying to train a blackmouth cur to be a working dog. I'm not sure if you guys would have seen it, but the free-head cattle working dog trials over here.
Yes.
I set a little bitch up, and I was actually going to go and do trials with her. The issue was the barking. Ultimately, I couldn't get that barking out of her when she was even just working free-head, and you'll lose points at a cattle dog trial for that.
For the bark.
But what I did realise is I did turn her into a collie. I could cast her, I could sit her, I could move her, 1 foot to the left, 2 foot to the right. But it took all the instinct out of her. Eventually, she just become a useless collie.
Mm-hmm.
Took everything that she wanted to do and just tried to create her to be another dog. But to do the baying, I think it's just a process of selecting a bitch and a sire that's going to have a little bit more looser bale, and then working on the process differently to how I start my pups now. Like nearly all my pups get started now on a rag, and if they grab the rag and catch it, hang on to it, that's all well and fun, and that's basically a bit of an instinct starting to kick in to catch that flag and hang on it. And I probably should, I won't do that with these baying dogs. I'll start another different process, and just in the top of my head, the first thing that comes to thought is the same with a flag, but I've got a mechanical flag for cutting horses. I can move that flag along the same arena that I'm going to use for a practice pen, and probably not let him catch it, but just let him watch that pig, watch that flag move.
Yeah.
And there's a process there. I think I can actually just develop the habit of, not staying back, not actually getting in and hanging on the pig.
I've seen a guy
the more
one
I
time.
think, the more you actually bringing it up, the more I'm thinking I'm probably crazy. But anyway,
we know a guy that he had a red-nosed pit, and he would he could take it to a bay pen competition and bay, and then tell it to catch on command. So I think you can do it.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be a process I can work through to get it done.
You got the right dog, you can make it happen.
Coming.
Yeah, no doubt. So with we talked to a guy last night. He's he's from Arkansas. He's a preacher, and he's a cowboy by day. He has stock dogs and stuff, and he was talking about his collies. And he was kind of like said the same thing you did in a way. He was like, he said he could take his collies and move a pig and put it wherever he wanted it, like just moving them. And I've had several people bring up the deal about why wouldn't you just use a border collie or a blue heeler or something like that in these bay pen competitions. Could you run on that for a minute, and why wouldn't you use one, and what's the difference? And also, somebody else had made the comment that a border collie they didn't think that a border collie could handle a rough pig.
Probably the European, the English working border collies that come across from that sort of sheep country, and that I would say not. But in Australia, like they've been imported into Australia, how many years, 50, 70 years, and there's some really tough border collies. Like the border collies that I was breeding come from really renowned, that free-head cattle dog trial stuff, but they would hang. Like I had full pedigree border collies that would catch a steer, catch a bull on the nose, on the ear, and they were tough. But also the control, like you could sit them on a dime. They're running at 15 kilometres an hour, hit it, and they just drop and do 11s on the ground and come to a skidding halt. Then you can move them left or right. You could do all that I believe, with border collies. Some of the border collies I've got in my pen now, I could do it with. But would they're naturally not going to sit there and bark at a pig and bay a pig. You're going to be able to control them and move the pig. But if it gets rough, you're probably going to go in, do a couple of nips, a couple of bites. He's not going to bark and hold it. Okay. I don't advertise it. I don't promote it greatly, but and they never leave my property, my dogs. I do a 3/4 collie, 1/4 cur, and that's generally what I use on the cattle nowadays. So
Okay.
I take a really good blackmouth cur male, I'll breed it to a really good quarter collie female, and I'll generally only keep a male out of that litter. I've tried the half, and to me they're not good. They're either near here or there because they sort of want that herding instinct, but then they don't have the controllability of a border collie.
Mm-hmm.
So then I take a really good male. I'll work him for a few years on cattle, and then I'll breed him back to another really good collie bitch. So then I end up with that 3/4 collie, 1/4 cur. I would be interested in bringing one of them back because I know that I could walk him in, I could do everything that I wanted to do to control that pig.
Yeah.
But your whole hog baying contest is basically that dog's got to be barking at the pig's face as close as possible, and any collie kelpie's not really going to do that. You could certainly keep a pig in the, control a pig and keep it in one spot for, if it goes to the bay off for 6-8 minutes, without a doubt, because I mean that dog's probably not expelling much energy either by not barking.
Yeah.
So he's just going to nip him and sit him there and then sit there and watch it. Wouldn't be real entertaining either, probably.
That's something that most of us don't get to see, though. Especially hog hunters, the actual control aspect of it. I think it would be a phenomenal thing to do, like if they were doing maybe a hog swap, like a little halftime show or something. Bring it out and run and show. Let the people see, hey, I can take this pig and move it from here and put it back in that chute, or I can bring it back over here or whatever. I think it would be something really good to see.
Yeah, there'd have to be blokes in the US, with collies and. Years ago, I remember seeing a bloke doing quarter collie, quarter cur, quarter bulldog, I think, and he was working on sheep, and probably could have went and run a sheepdog trial with them. Though that he had that much control on them, and maybe them pigs there that have been used a little bit might be a bit tougher, a bit harder, but you get the right dog. That's I'm certain that you'd be able to put up the same sort of system that we had for a free cattle dog trial. They go through a couple of pegs and then they go through a gate and you move them around. You can do all that with the pigs. Not it's just what control and how much control you've got on that collie or kelpie, and it's all about that instant stop, put him in the right spot, move him to the next right spot. That's all it comes down to.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been kind of just really interested in the control part of those dogs. I don't know why I've never had one. Because I've had so many different breeds over the years, I'm like, I've always wanted to do it just to see how much I could train and how much control I could handle, I could put on a dog. I'm not the greatest by any means, by no means. I just have never done it. And it's something that I have never done and I wanted to try it, but I still haven't.
It's repetition and time. That's all it comes down to. But I mean, for me, I've done all that with border collies. I've had border collies since I've left home, sort of thing. And as a kid, and my mother was a really good obedience dog trial person with border collies, and I grew up with that. And then moved out to the properties where you always got a working dog, and it was a prestigious thing. Out of you're on a massive station, 10 ringers in a stock camp, and you've all got dogs. Everyone's allowed to have a dog. But who's got the best one? Who's got the best control? Who can work their dog the best? It was always a bit of a competition on who had the best dogs. And I've done all that with my collies. And then the moment we imported the blackmouth curs, all that went out the window. No control whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Point them at the right thing that you want them to hunt, and let them rip.
There you go. So
the
how
more
did
control you put on them, the worse they got.
Yeah, I agree with that. So how did you find out about the blackmouth cur? What made you guys want to get the blackmouth cur and bring it to Australia? Because it's not like you could just run down the road and go buy a puppy, No,
it was
how'd that come about?
My cousin started the process.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been over to the States, and I think it was around. I think he keeps saying it was around Hurricane Katrina,
mm-hmm.
and he was sort of looking at dogs, and he suggested, maybe blue lacies or Catahoulas, a few other things, and he'll just have a bit of a look around while he's over there. He just sort of mentioned it to me, but then that all sort of come to a halt when he was over there, I think, because of that Katrina, and he couldn't get anywhere, couldn't get around. So come back a couple of years later, he come up to where I work on a big property and just said, I was still interested about bringing these dogs over, but I've done a bit of research on black-mouthed curs. And at the time, I worked on a pretty big property, and I dealt with a lot of rough cattle. So cattle coming down from the Northern Territory and backgrounding on the property that I had, so them cattle would be handled somewhere else, and they wouldn't be handled very well. So they'd come to me, I'd grow them out for 2 years, and they'd get up into the forest and the scrub, and I wouldn't be able to get them out. Mm. So, like I said, a lot of good border collies, a lot of rough border collies, but there just seemed to be a point in difference. Well, if we get this black-mouthed cur, one, it barks, and one, they're going to be hard as hell, and they get into that thick scrub, they'll be able to handle the rough cattle. So, yeah, he did a bit more research. Basically, the only thing we could do was jump online. This is 14 years ago. Actually, what was online, to find a breeder was pretty hard. Mm-hmm. But Randy Wright sort of stood out, and David Toms. So I contacted David Toms, knowing that he worked his all on cattle. He's an old rancher from down near Three Rivers, and me and him got along very well on phone calls and that sort of stuff. We just talk cattle, talk shit, talk about mastering, riding horses all day. Mm-hmm. Everything that he told me about the dogs was sort of, exactly what I wanted to hear. And he was just adamant that he would do whatever it takes to get them over to us. So, that was a very hard thing to find. Even though there was other people sort of with the dogs, it was hard to find someone committed to say, well, I'm going to do the 12 months quarantine. And then at that time, they had to do 12 months in-house quarantine for all the rabies titer testing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he was willing to do it. And, he was just an really honest, very helpful buddy rancher. As far as his dog line, I think they were as good as probably anything that we could have found at the time. They were worked hard. You could prove that they were worked hard out in the paddock all day. And then he'd tell us, I'd go mustering. David would say, I've been mustering all day with 6 black-mouthed curs, and then me, what do you call them, wetbacks would take them pig hunting all night. Yeah. So they're pretty solid sort of dogs to be out mustering all day and then pig hunting all night. Yeah. So, and we picked Randy Wright for a male. Obviously that Weatherford Ben bloodline's pretty renowned. Seemed to be something that are very, very consistent. Everyone that talked about having that line, that they all did work. There was a lot of consistency in their working. They're rough. Exactly sort of what we want for our pigs over here. We get a bit bigger pigs and a bit rougher pigs, and they're rough on cattle. So, can't talk up David Toms enough. He bred the bitches and then kept a bitch out of each litter for us. So the original arrangement was two females and a male in one consignment. So he organised the male from Randy, which was out of Cattle Master. It got transported over to David Toms. He housed it and looked after it for us, plus the 2 bitches. Did all the quarantine work for us, sent us photos, videos all the time, kept us really up to date. And then a week before the process of doing the final testing and flying them, he actually said to us, look, I was really worried about the 2 females not passing the quarantine final test the week before flying. So out of my own pocket, he'd taken another 2 females out of each litter and did the whole process of the quarantine himself. Mm. And he sort of said to us, look, man, I've got 4 females that are qualified to fly. Do you want them? And we really appreciate what you've done. Like, it's a lovely gesture. But in reality, there's probably not any point of us, having 2 full sisters out of each litter. But genetically, there's not much point. Yeah. In hindsight, we probably could have, because we could have worked 2 really hard and then just bred to, but then you're not actually. So we still work the original females that come. I hunted very hard. Troy hunted hard, his bitch, and my bitch as well, and it wouldn't have made sense to bring two. And then he said, well, how about I put one in pup? She's just starting to show that she's in season. So we joined a female to Tom's trigger, and that's how we ended up with 3 females, one in pup, one in pup, and a male. So we got sort of, we got sort of 4 or 5 genetics in one shipment.
Wow.
Which was a massive process. And
Yes.
I think roughly back then, 14 years ago, it cost us $20,000, which is really cheap. Yeah, at the moment, it was a very cheap and a very, very productive bloody process.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. There's a lot of people that don't understand how much time and dedication it takes to do an actual breeding program. And a lot of them don't understand why you just won't give them a puppy or why they're not made available to the public. It's like, man, you put 10, 15 years into something. I don't want to let just Joe Blow over here take it and ruin it, and mess up everything we work for. So, I mean, do y'all sell to the public, or do y'all just keep them for yourselves and work them?
Yeah, no, we do now. Look, it's been a long process.
Yeah,
so
long enough.
We brought them over, and a lot of people didn't even know the name. Like that was probably the biggest thing. Like, and you could say, "Oh, Google it," and then they'd Google it, and there wasn't even much really to Google. Like in reality, there's we weren't on Facebook, we weren't on any of the social media stuff then. It was just a small little website that we ran for the first couple of years, just trying to get the information out there, and people would, and we were doing articles in news magazines and Queensland Country Life and the mainstream newspapers that went out to properties and stuff, just to try and even get the name out there. Pig hunting magazine, just put a little article in there. Oh, there's a new breed in Australia. What's a black mouth cur? What does it do? Well, traditionally, bailing dogs, if there was one, it was a border collie or a kelpie or a red cattle dog or something that's been crossed up. And to say that this is coming from America specifically to bail pigs and nothing else, hunt, the drive and the hunt. There's probably nothing in Australia that had the drive and the hunt like it, but it's only going to bail, it's not going to catch.
Yeah,
that was a hard sell. There was a lot of people in the early days took them. We were very harsh in the early days to what did actually go out to the paddock. We're very adamant what we started with was going to get put out there at a level that everything's 100% and work to 100%. So a lot of the earlier pups and dogs all got stayed in house, all got worked to an age and then sold, and if they didn't make the grade, they disappeared. So I think we're better off now for how harsh we were. In the early days, we probably were a bit too harsh. At the moment, been breeding them for 14 years and probably only done 70 pups. So it's not a big number that we actually bred and promoted in the early part either. But
no, that's not
what we did, we did it right. So that what went out there now, everyone can come back and say, well, what they got and what's out hunting in Australia is a black mouth cur from Black Mouth Curs Australia is the best that's probably here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was a very hard sell to. You do a full litter of 8, and it was hard to sell a litter of 8. So most of the time I worked them myself. Had to video them, working a pig before you could sell them. Had to video them working cattle before. There was a few fellas in the early days took them for cattle. That was short-lived because of the barking. And, I tried to give a few away to blokes that would take them out on hard cattle and clean skin, bull catching and all that sort of stuff, but they just can't hack that barking. I sort of worked through it. I worked through it, and I'm happy with how they bark when I go on musky cattle with them now. But as far as really taking off in a rush, it didn't happen. It's really now in the last 2 or 3 years there's been a real positive, across social media sort of highlight about the black mouth curs in Australia.
Wow, that's a good good testimony there of what all you guys have done, and how much time and effort and money that it takes to do these things. And, you done it right. And now you're sitting on a good line of dogs that are consistent. And I think that's probably one of the most important traits that I could see in a line of dogs, period, would be the consistency factor of what you're producing. And catching the cattle, that to me, that's pretty wild. I've seen some of the videos that you guys had, and
Yep.
I hear a lot of these guys here, they're talking shit about, well, I've got this one cur dog, and man, he'll handle a 200-pound boar hog by himself. And I was like, I started seeing those videos you had. I was like, oh Lord,
Ooh.
yeah. It's like, what in the hell?
Hanging.
Yeah, those that's a little different. Tell us about the stuff you do with the cattle.
Yeah, so I don't do much of it now. I've moved away from that and come back to a smaller property and all Wagyu cattle. So all small Wagyu high-end Japanese cattle that I've got to be very careful with for the dogs and the pups and the calves, obviously. But it was a highlight of my life. So worked on some bigger properties. And you always sort of got rough steers. You bigger cattle that don't want to come out of the forest or out of the scrub. Brigalow scrub over here is pretty thick, and we get into some real rangy stuff. And the idea of the curs was to bring them over. I would work them pretty hard on cattle. My cousin took his and worked them on pigs. The moment I started working them on the cattle, I just went like, this is something different. Like it's very, very unique to sort of have a dog just go 100 mile an hour around and around the cattle. Anything pokes its nose out, it's bang bang. Big bark, big deep bark right in its face, pushes it back. If it actually wants to come and leave the mob, the first instinct is they're just grabbing it on the ear. And you can do that with collies, or you can crossbred collies, all you want, and it'll be a litter. There might be a handful in the litter that do it. There'll be none. There's crossbreeding happening all the time, trying to produce these collie crosses or whatever that'll do naturally just what the cur did. As soon as something left the mob, it was on. You could have three curs holding a mob of 100 cows and calves, and they're just doing the right thing. They're not putting enough pressure. They're not putting too much pressure on it. Not enough to blow the cattle or blow the cows and calves. You take them the next day and put them on 500 big steers that have just come out of a big paddock. They're 800, 900 kilos full of rubbish. They're doing the same thing round and round, but they need double the pressure to what the cows and calves did, and they'll do it, and they'll hold them. One big bullock or something comes running out, and it'll have 3 curs hanging off its ears, and I just went, "This is great. This is the best thing I've seen for a long time." So, and it did take me time to understand how to work them. I spent a lot of time after they got here talking to David Doms. And he would say, let them do this, just don't pressurize them. So for us here, we normally work cattle. We'll get into the lead of the cattle on a horse, and you'll have 4 or 5 collies, and they'll work the tail, and they'll just bring the cattle to you. Yeah, wherever you walk on your horse, the cattle will follow, and the dogs will bring them. The curs are totally opposite. So you've got a mob of rough cattle, trying to push them out of somewhere. You sort of get in and you push the cattle from behind, and that pressure makes them blow out, and then the curs just keep hammering them back there. And I really like one of the most sort of outstanding things that just stuck with me that I'm going to keep them. I'm going to keep them for cattle was I had 4 or 5 really big bullocks been getting away in a paddock. I'm talking a paddock sort of 10,000 acres.
Wow.
2 helicopters to muster. It'd have 1,000 steers in there. Every year, and there's always 4 big bullocks that just kept evading the helicopters, going back into this thick Brigalow mountains and hiding. And I've had them on their own before with collies, and the collies would hold them, but they just keep walking and keep getting thicker into the scrub, and eventually you lose them because the collies aren't barking. And if you can't keep up with them, the dogs are going with the cattle, but you don't know where they are. Too thick for the helicopter to see through and spot where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually you sort of got to ride off, and your dogs come back a couple of hours later. So them same 4 big bullocks come into a watering point. We had all the cattle held up, a couple of helicopters, and I said to everyone working for me, look, if these 4 big bullocks just go, I've got the blackmouth curs, I'll just go with them and follow them, and I'll send the dogs onto them. You guys just stick with the helicopter and the rest of the quiet cattle and follow the track out of the range and out onto the open. Anyway, sure enough, as soon as we come out of the gate, the 4 big bullocks just gone straight down the creek. Sent the 3 curs with them, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. This is nearly the first time I've ever done it. Scrub that thick that you can't ride through. So I just sent them, and I was smart enough to put tracking collars on them. So that's one thing I sort of learned straight up is these dogs go a long way. Put tracking collars on them, even with the cattle. So sent them with the 4 big bullocks, and just let them go. Didn't pressurise them. Just watched them on the tracker, and the cattle went down in sort of hid behind a little cliff face, and sort of stood in this little hollow in a creek where the helicopter couldn't see them, and you couldn't really get in there from a track, a road that sort of where the other cattle were getting walked from. So I went in, could hear the dogs bark, and found them on the tracker, could hear them bark, and got in there, and these bullocks were just trying to break out, and just hitting them on the ear, on the nose, and they would have held them there for like half an hour, 40 minutes before I could even get 200 metres, 300 metres close to them. And the dogs just kept hammering and hammering and hammering. Helicopter flew over, and the cattle the forehead got a bit twitchy again and wanting to run off. They just kept hammering them and hammering them. I would have spent nearly an hour and a half in there, and I just on a 2-way said everyone just I'll come out, just leave it, I'll be out. Work the main mob of cattle, I'll be out in a bit. About an hour and a half later, I rode out of the scrub with them 4 bullocks basically touching me on the horse so that they could get away. Not get away from the dog, but the pressure was off them. So the moment they got close enough to me, the dogs or the 3 curs dropped off, and they just sort of followed along, and the 4 bullocks were touching my horse and my legs as I rode out of the scrub, took them out into the open, which they hadn't been out, maybe 5 years they hadn't been out into the open country. Wow. And they just followed me out and back down into the main mob, and from then they got into the main mob and never put their heads out again.
So
that's something very unique that I've never seen and never done until we had the curs.
Yeah, that made a statement. That was that's pretty awesome there. That's a damn good story right there to and a testament.
Well, it's hard to sort of portray, but it's very hard to portray how 4 big bullocks could be running away for 4 or 5 years, and 3 dogs just put that pressure on them to where the only release they got was when they were close enough to me on a horse, and then they just followed me out. And David Toms told me that. He said that over the phone.
Really?
You'll get rough cattle, and you just hammer them with them curs until you on a horse is their best friend, and then they'll just follow you anywhere. And he was right.
Huh. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So you still talk with David Toms a lot?
No. So we did over the years.
Yeah.
Went and seen him in that trip just then to the US.
Yeah.
And Susan, his daughter, invited us to come and see him, which is great. We cannot give him enough credit for what he did for us with the dogs and the bloodline that we got from him. And went and spent a bit of time with him down there at 3 Rivers, and unfortunately, illness, he sort of didn't. We couldn't really talk about what we'd done, but he understood that why we were there, and it was great to meet the family, and they really appreciated what we've done with his dogs over here. So,
wow, that's good.
It's been a really good connection.
Good deal. And that's, that says a lot about yourself to make, you guys make sure that y'all give credit, constantly to the man who helped you guys get started. And there's a lot of times that kind of gets pushed to the side once somebody gets, they get a name built up for themselves and they get on up there, then they kind of forget other people, but you guys haven't. That's pretty good.
I think there's, you guys say it a lot, someone will have a line of dogs, and, how long does it take for it to be your own line of dogs? I don't know. Like, I've been breeding these curs for 14 years, and I probably still don't consider I've got a line of dogs.
Yeah.
But I have people ringing me saying, "Oh, I've got one of your dogs, one of your line." I'm like, "Well, it's just what I breed, mate." Like, it's, but in reality, everything that we've got from David Toms and the one dog from Randy is still what it is, because we actually haven't been able to diversify just yet. Like, so I got new semen in 2 years ago, and I've only got one female pup. But I mean, really, everything that's still here is David Tom's dog. Like, everything was bred heavy to that Crittle trigger happy, and the two females that were the best two females, and there's still got to be David Tom's line. They're not mine yet. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't crossed them up enough yet to say, well, it's not David Tom's dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a bit different. Like, you guys can cross. You know, there seems to be a little bit of a conversation about foundation blackmouth cur and yellow dogs.
Yeah.
For us, apparently they're foundation dogs, and I'd like to keep it like that. And that's, whether or not I go down the path of doing my own thing and they just become yellow dogs, I don't know. That's why I'm coming back and need to learn more about what you guys are saying are yellow dogs or foundation dogs.
Yeah. Now ours, I've had curs for many years, but I didn't have only curs. You know what I mean? I had other stuff. Yeah. So now we've kind of transitioned to where we mainly have predominantly cur dogs. And so what we've done is we use the term yellow dog all the time with what me and Nate are doing. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a full-blooded blackmouth cur. It literally means that it's a yellow dog. And that's all it means here on our yard. But we have our main foundation is blackmouth curs. But now out of those, we have started our own line, and we have some Kimmer cur put in there, which a lot of the Kimmers that are registered they're yellow or, light tan. They're pretty much the same color as blackmouth curs. So we incorporated that because the Kimmer has a lot of things that we like. And so it was like, well, we'll try these. But honestly, like the blackmouth curs that we have that are full-blooded, we don't need anything else with, like, literally, we don't. Like, they'll do it by themselves, and they do perfectly fine. They excel. They're exceptional. You know what I mean? I don't have to cross them up, but
no, I don't see a need for me to. Like, it's just genetic-wise, I need to, outcross, or I need to be able to keep the genetics.
Exactly. And the only reason we're doing it, Baden, is because there's so many people who have blackmouth curs now.
Yeah, right.
And like you said, the lingo gets lost and the words get mixed up. They'll say, "Oh, it's a yellow dog." Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a blackmouth cur. We all say yellow dog, like you said. Then you have the foundation stuff, and it gets into almost like politics. So it's like, you know what? I've got some of these dogs. I've got a couple out there right now that look like full-blooded plots, but they have zero plot in them.
Yeah, right.
It's just the look, And I've got some that look like full-blooded blackmouth curs, and they don't have any blackmouth cur in them, really.
Yeah.
And that's just
how it
goes.
I can tell you at Earl's, there was a lot of yellow dogs, but my cousin and I could actually look at one and go, well, that's probably a foundation blackmouth cur, not a yellow dog.
Yeah,
there is a bit of a distinction if you know what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But do they work any different? Do they, obviously people who are yellow dogs are crossed up for a bit of a reason. I'm in agreement with you. There's no reason to ever crossbreed a blackmouth cur.
No.
It can do everything that you want. You can make it bay. You can make it, there's obviously ones that bay quite well that would suit bay penning. And then for us here in Australia, we want them to go and catch a pig. If they go a kilometre and get on a 100-kilo boar, I can guarantee you that boar's probably not going to move 50 metres.
Yeah. And see,
they'll do whatever it takes to.
Now, y'all, when let's go to the hog hunting side of it. Like what you just said, like if they go a kilometre and they get on a boar, are they going to be caught? Are they going to bark? Or is what I'm saying? Are they rougher dogs? when they're hog hunting?
Most of them that come from me would be catching them.
Okay.
So depend on the size and then probably the roughness of the pig too. Like one thing we do know here is the big pigs here in CQ, they're getting 110, 120 kilos easy off grain and off crops. I went out here a couple of months ago, 2 bitches caught 2 pigs in 2 nights, 120 kilos.
So that's
just
what,
swung them
250, 250 pounds.
Yeah,
here.
Yeah,
okay.
Yep. And then them pigs were a bit soft and didn't run or didn't really do anything. They just let them grab them, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, if they're out far enough, you put a bit like you were saying, you put the 2. With me, if I put 2 bitches that are a little bit looser, they probably will bail it for they'll bail it until you get there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for us hunting, from what happened when we're hunting in the States with Rusty and that, it's different. Like we are pig chasing Australia to some degree. We see pigs and we chase them. Or we see hot sign and we let dogs go. We're not out there recasting a dog expecting him to go a kilometre or 2, find a scent, then find the pig, then bail it. So like I've been thinking about it since I got home. So one, our dogs are probably a lot fresher when we do let them go, and they're keen, and we've taught them really to, just hunt as quick as they can, get to the pig as quick as they can, and probably catch it, even with my curs. And that's similar how they're hunting Arabs and all the running dogs here. Is let them run, get to the pig as quick as possible, and catch it. My cousin and I are trying to do it a bit different. We're trying to do it a bit different. We're putting the dogs on the ground, letting them use their nose, and go as far as they need to find the pig, and then bail it. Still having issues with they'll get to a pig, they might bail it for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then they're just either on it, catching it, and you've got to be quick enough to get up there. My cousin's hunting down in more mountain country down around Tamworth and that, and they'll get a couple of K up over a hill or whatever, and he's got 2 young males there that come from me, and they'll just catch everything. Doesn't matter what size it is.
Mm-hmm.
And to him, it's sort of getting to a point. We're both getting to a point where we actually need to, breed them back to where they're baying or bailing a pig better. Doesn't worry me. Doesn't worry a lot of the other fellas that I'm selling them to. They all like that really hard stop catchingness. But 90% of the time, blokes will tell me, if it was a big pig, the dogs are smart enough to get back and not get hurt. Like it's very, it's very rarely that someone will ring me and sort of say, my cur's been absolutely towed up. I've got to take it to the vet because it's been ripped up. One, they probably had a bit of a catch on it if it was a big pig, then dropped back and started bailing. But the moment the pigs try to run, they're on them that hard, they won't get more than 50 metres. That's one thing I sort of didn't really understand from the hunting over there is if you say a pig breaks, it might take them dogs an hour to get him again.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't hack that.
Yeah. See,
if that pig broke, he'd only break and go 100 metres at the best.
See, that's when
and that's in thick country or clear country.
I was going to say it doesn't matter either wherever you're at. That's just the standard that you guys have. I based a lot of our stuff when I were up until just a few years ago. That's the way we hunted. Is like Rodney had looser bay dogs, and they would check a hog. If it moved, they would grab him and turn him. But if the hog ever broke, I threw my dogs on the ground, and he's never going to break again. We're going to break him.
Yeah.
We're I promise you, he is never. And I will say that there were several times we would be off the property, and we would be on somebody else's property where it's supposed to be, or the dogs would be a mile deep, and they're caught the whole time. It's really hot and humid. It's really hard on the dogs. But like you said a while ago, I've always been told the same thing. They're like, oh, they get on one bad enough, they'll back up and bay it. No, they don't. They just get mad and they hang on even more. They like if they get on a bad hog and that hog hits them, they're going to hang on to him. They're not letting go. And we just didn't. And I'm still like that. I still don't want a pig to break, but I found a new challenge, kind of like what you're doing too. That's kind of where I'm at with it, baby, is because it's like, how can I do this and see if I can make these dogs do a little different? I don't want the hogs breaking. So how can I work these dogs and how can we breed these dogs up to basically have the best dogs? I don't know. It's crazy.
No, it's always. I mean, anyone that's breeding dogs, I mean, you're breeding them. You know what you've got, but you're always striving to make it better. Like there's no, is every dog that you got the best it can be? Well, you can probably always say that. Everyone's got a story about the best dog they ever had. That trigger happy dog that I had. Like things he done was phenomenal. Can I ever replace him? Probably not. Can I breed something that's gonna do exactly what that I want? Well, you're always gonna strive to do it, and you're just gonna keep throwing dogs at pigs until one day you go, that's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And I mean, Goose is a great example of what a dog can do under pressure to learn what he's learned to get out of that way of that pig.
No doubt.
Like that's not genetics. That's a dog that's been put in that position. He's learnt that his ability to get around that corner and step sideways and shoulder to shoulder to that pig is where he doesn't get hit.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't teach a dog to do that. You can replicate something that you might think that's going to do it. Probably never happen. But we can certainly take all our dogs out in the paddock and hunt pigs, and you'll find that one that does exactly what you want. You're going to keep him, female or male, you're going to keep him, and genetics aren't going to say that it passes on, but you're going to try.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. You're going to keep trying, and that's why we keep doing what we do. It's just crazy. It's one of those things, like you said, you hear about the best dog you ever had, and if it was truly the best dog that you were ever going to have, then you might as well quit.
That's right.
So I guess that's why we just.
I'll tell you how much I rated that trigger happy dog that I had. So he was phenomenal. He did things from a perspective of a black mouth cur that I didn't think would happen in any dog. He caught bulls. The first time he ever saw a pig, we were sitting up on top of a bit of a cliff face, and he's only 4-year-old, never seen a pig in his life, and I didn't hunt him on pigs, didn't want to. And I'm looking out for a set of binoculars across the property, and there's a mob of pigs. Hang on, there's a dog buddy in amongst them. Oh, that's Happy. He's down there caught a pig. He must have went 2 or 3 k's just on the smell. I don't know what it is. I'm going to go down there and catch it. And just small things just progressed to where he was a phenomenal dog. And unfortunately, when I took him to the Northern Territory, we're out on some floodplain country, and we had a lot of trouble shifting some cattle into a set of yards. And the contractors rang me up and said, "Oh, can you bring a few dogs out?" All right, I've got exactly the dogs that you need. I'm going to bring out 3 or 4 of these blackmouth curs. These guys up in the Northern Territory had never seen them before. So me and my brother ute them, took them on the back of the ute, took them out there, got them in behind the cattle, and got all the cattle buddy moving, and did what we had to do. Got all these cattle into the yards, and job's done. Put a couple of avgas drums, so helicopter fuel drums, on the back of the ute, and tied the dogs to the back of the drums. Enough in the inside of the ute that they wouldn't. I didn't think they would fall out, so I did everything right.
Yeah.
And end of the day, went past the corn patch, little pub there, picked up a snack pack of beer. Driving home.
Oh, what? You picked up a what?
Snack pack. We call it a 6-pack a snack pack over here. It only gets you a little way down the road, eh?
Okay. I was just making sure. I thought that's what you said.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Snack pack.
God, I should be Australian. I should be Australian.
So anyway, I was driving and my brother's having a couple of beers. He looks out the side mirror and goes, "Oh shit, your dog's out the side of the ute getting dragged." Fuck, which one is it? You know, and Happy come in utero, and he's the only one out of the litter that survived. So he was the only one in Australia we know of. Well, we know he's the only one in Australia by Tom's Trigger, and we don't know if there was actually many other Tom's Trigger dogs bred while David Tom's had him. So he's sort of pretty special. Everything I can tell you stories about him. He's a phenomenal dog. He's hanging out the side of the ute, dragging with all his legs all mushed up.
Oh man.
Not much of his right foot left. Right foot. There's only a couple of toes left. All his heels are gone. All his sort of side of his hips gone. His eyes are bugging out of his head. My brother sort of freaking out. Just picked him up, threw him into the back of the ute with the other two dogs there. And anyway, we're like, right, he's done, he's dead. I'm stressing a bit. I'll have a beer. Yeah. Anyway, we were just sort of standing there having a beer, having a smoke. And next minute he goes, and just took a big breath and stood up and started walking around.
What?
And I was, what the hell?
Yeah.
So he's flopping around on his back legs, but his eyes sort of come good and he's breathing. So we rip our shirts off and we pin him down, put him in the front of the ute, and it's still about an hour's drive home. So we just like really put all his sort of legs together, his back legs, his front ones were all right, and wrapped him up in these shirts and sort of just kept him on the floor of the ute and made sure he kept breathing and that, and drove the hour home. I'd not long been at this property. It was a very, very big property, bit of a prestigious sort of property in the Northern Territory. Sort of rolled in late in the 5 or 6, just getting dark. Went and seen my wife and said, "Look, I've just mushed up this, the dog that we actually really want to keep and we need to breed with and spend a lot of money on. I've got to take him to Darwin and go to a vet." And didn't know any vets up in Darwin or around that area. Rang a mate that actually had caterpillars up there and was from Humpty Doo, and he said, "Look, running into this vet, they'll do late night stuff," because it was a 3-hour drive into Darwin. So, by the time we get in there, it's getting close to midnight sort of thing. Drove him all the way in there, give him to the vet, and they said they had a good look, sedated him and had a good look and said, "Look, well, we think we can keep him alive. Look, there's nothing really wrong other than trying to heal these legs up. Some bones have sort of been really shaven down. His foot, he only had one toe left on one foot, but, he should be able to walk and we should be able to look after him." He spent 4 months in the vet. They looked after him. Cost me. I'd done a bit of a deal with the vet, and they kept him in there for 4 months. Kept him alive. Got him back. Had it all healed up over about a year and a half. Didn't take him anywhere. Didn't do anything with him for about a year and a half, and then sort of moved back to where we are now, and just went straight to pig hunting again with him. Even though his back feet were, hard to travel. He could smell a pig and he would go a long way, but he was very slow. But he was catching 100-kilo boars on his own sort of thing, and just absolutely loved it. Couldn't keep him away from working and catching pigs. But I rated that dog that hard that I still wanted to breed him, and the issue was with his back legs sort of being mushed up and not right. He was really low in the hind end on his back feet. He sort of nearly walked back on the back of his hocks.
Yeah.
So when he tried to beat a bitch, he couldn't stand up high enough to put it in.
Shit.
So there was no way I was not ever going to breed him, because he is still the best dog we've ever had.
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah.
I'd physically have, my wife would hold a bitch that was on. I'd hold him up, I'd put it in for him, and then because he was still couldn't get enough balance on his back legs, I'd have to pump him to make him do the job.
Hey,
and there's not many people committed to pumping their dog to make it.
No, there's not.
Make it do the job.
No, there's not.
It's a lot of dedication.
Yeah, and I fully understand that, because I had a dog sitting right here in this room where we're at now years ago.
Yep.
And I wanted to make this breeding happen, and Nathan came out with the AI kit that he had bought, artificial insemination. I was like, "So what I got to do?" He was like, "Just slide that bag over it and jerk him off." I was like, "Wait a damn minute. I don't know about this, son." And so the bitch was a lot smaller.
Yep.
And we had to hold her she wasn't having it. And he loved it. Like he was just, the dog's just looking at me, and I'm like, bro, like what are you doing? It was the most, I don't know. I will never do it again. I know I'll pay a vet.
We tried to get him to mount her, and he would not mount her for whatever reason.
Yeah, he would not mount her at all. He still never has. I don't know what's wrong with him. But it takes a lot of dedication to touch your dog's wiener.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, my wife wouldn't do it. I'm like, this probably, you get in and do it. No, your dog, you want to breed him? Anyway, buddy. I'd be there pumping him for about 4 minutes until the job was done and he was knotted, and I'd be tired. My arms would be tired for pumping him and pushing him in and out. And yeah.
Those puppies were expensive, weren't they?
When you have a good dog and you know what he was, you do anything to let him rebreed him.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
Reproduce him.
Yeah, that's it. Oh man,
I'll tell you. I'll finish the story from when we come. So we put the dog. I'll just finish this one.
Yeah.
When we put the dog in the Darwin, we were driving home, and I'd only been at this property for about a week. And my wife and kids are all at home. Yeah, it's midnight. 1 o'clock in the morning. We're driving home. My brother then had already had about six snack packs, so he was fully loaded. I was driving. Anyway, driving down into the front driveway of the property, and there's a 2-metre freshwater crocodile walking down the road.
Mm.
And it's quite unusual to see them out in the open and walking down the road.
Yeah.
And I had the bright idea of, we've been here for a week, my kids haven't seen a crocodile yet. They're only young, they're all sort of under 8. I'll catch this crocodile and show them their first crocodile. So when you see Steve Irwin jump on a crocodile, it ain't the same as real life when you try and jump on one yourself. So my brother's laughing. My brother's there. He's laughing. He's head off. You gonna do it? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. Get the duct tape. So we get the duct tape. Get out. I launch onto this crocodile and put its head down. I'm screaming at him to duct tape its mouth, and he was just laughing his head off. It wouldn't come near it.
Oh,
so
shit.
I'm wrestling with the crocodile, trying to keep it down, because now I've got to get off it and try and get away before.
Yes.
And he wouldn't rope its legs, or he wouldn't duct tape its mouth. So I'd make a little bit of a move to try and get off it. Anyway, it just went to town, this thing, and it just spun around, come at me.
Mm.
Had a fair chop at me, and I was like, oh yeah, I got away. Nothing happened. Anyway, and my brother said, hey, have a look at your hand. Anyway, the friggin' thing got me on the hand and ripped it. Didn't bite through my hand, or didn't really hook onto my hand, but somehow or another it had gotten my hand and shredded up all the top of my hand.
Mm.
So after dropping the dog off, wrestling a crocodile, ripped up my hand, I'm like, shit, I think I need to go back to Darwin and go and see the doctor and get my hand stitched up.
Yeah. That's a hell of a trip.
So anyway, I didn't bother. I went home, but he patched up, and I had the job of the next day explaining to all the staff. I actually had a meeting the next day with the staff, telling them about the dangers of crocodiles, and you can't go swimming and you can't handle crocodiles. And I went, oh, what happened to your hand? Oh, I cut it on a bit of barbed wire.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy.
But I kept my dog alive. That was the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and people, it's hard sometimes when you have a dog that, if he gets hurt that bad, and it's going to cost a lot of money. I've seen a lot of people, they're like, man, I can't afford it. And, it kind of sucks, because I've been in positions like that where it's like, man, it's a lot of money, but I try to make it happen anyway. But then you see some people, they'll spend a lot of money on dogs that like they shouldn't, it's like, that dog's not worth the shit, And so it's a responsibility that we have to the animals. They didn't ask for us to have them and to be born and for us to raise them. So, you're doing the right thing when you do that. But when it's a dog like that, that'll do everything, you have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to spend as much money as it takes, and you have to help him hump a bitch. You have to do that. you have to. Sometimes you got to whoop a crocodile in the middle of the road. You never know. Oh, wow.
Well, he ended up siring some. Everything that I've got here now, I've got 5 bitches that are all heavy bred to him. They're all really good bitches, and if I hadn't done it, and I hadn't sort of kept that line, I think I would be disappointed.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so, how
yeah.
all the dogs turned out good off of him?
So nearly everything, like I say, everything now sort of heavy bred back to him, and that's why they are pretty rough. He was the bull catching, sort of dog, but nose, like nose and hunt and drive, he's been the best one from the start. Other than a couple of the 2 import bitches that were the full sisters, the one that my cousin kept and that I kept that were out of 1 female, they were probably the 2 best. And I've actually found another dog. So there was another lady import some blackmouth curs off Randy Rod as well. She brought in 2 females, and there was a male dog. There's a male dog that's the only one left out of them litters that come in utero, and this male ended up in Cooktown with a fella and had a hard life. A bit like this happy dog, had a hard life, a lot of bull catching, a lot of really big pig, getting caught, done the hard work. And I tracked him down, and he's actually a bit of an out. He's still from Randy's bloodlines, but what we had didn't have any of that Hellcat, all that sort of stuff in it that he did for a while.
That's right.
So technically, it's still foundation blackmouth cur, whatever you want to call it, and a bit of an outcross to what we had. So I found that dog, had him brought down and served 2 bitches. And I've got 2 females out of 2 separate litters now that are, one of them she's phenomenal. So she's really tightly bred to Happy, and then across this other dog that we call Rogue, and he's a bit the same. He's a thrashing machine. I've seen him on a 110 kilo pig just hit it like T-bone it, trying to catch it that hard. So, now I've got that bitch, and she'll catch anything. She'll out-hunt all the bitches that I've got at the moment, and she'll catch anything. And, there's 2 females there to work with that are all bred back to Happy, and the 2 good females. And, that's a bit of an outcross, something that I'm working with. And then I imported semen from a fella down at Florida. I'm not sure if he'll care if I say his name or not, but he was really helpful. He had that old, you might know it, that old Okie Finoki cowboy,
yeah,
blackmouth. Yeah, so we chased that for quite a few years and never got anywhere with being able to get semen in. So he's got a dog called J-Dub, T&K's John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
And I just seen on Facebook that he said he collected him, and I said, would you be interested in collecting him for export for Australia? And he just said, yeah, I'll do it, mate. And within 6 months, I had 4 straws over him. So I've done 1 litter, I've done 1 straw, 1 dose to Lucy, which is the older 7-year-old older bitch that I've got that's really tightly bred to Happy, and got 1 female pup out of an AI litter, which is a bit disappointing. Cost me $6,000, but all up, with the semen and the import costs and then the vet costs to do the AI. But she's beautiful, big type of blackmouth cur. Gone. One thing I did notice, breeding sort of Happy and then the other 2 main females, we probably made them a little bit smaller and a bit stockier. Sort of lost that deep chest, long leg, sort of greyhound sort of shape, if you know what I mean. Like,
oh yeah.
Well, I think we lost a bit of that, but what we did breed, we bred better nose, we bred toughness, all that we wanted. Whereas now with this, I call her Yeba. She's 12 months old, probably 3 or 4 inches higher than some of my smaller dogs, and just got the drive like you wouldn't believe. I can't take her hunting. I don't take her hunting because I just can't afford to get her hurt yet.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get a litter out of her before something happens. But I've had her down at my practice pen, and she will chew the mesh off to get to a pig. She's just doing everything right. I haven't got her out on the ground and seen what the nose does yet, but I'm pretty certain it's going to work. So.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Now, with having so much time and money in these dogs like this, and being in Australia, there's a few questions that I personally, me and Nate, we wanted to ask about, like, because we deal with a lot of issues like with worms, dogs having worms. We live in the Southeast. It's very, very humid. It's almost like a jungle climate. I mean, it's a lot of moisture. So, and then other type of parasites. So, what all kind of parasites do you guys have to deal with? What type of medicines and wormers? And also, what do you prefer on how to keep your dog up? Do you have it in a kennel, chain spots, or let it run loose in the house?
Definitely won't be letting them run loose in the house. No, we're Queensland, so we're a little bit subtropical, probably not as much as sort of that Florida, like that sort of wet down there. You've got to get further north, above us to get into that real wet country where, ticks, worms, parvo. Like parvo's a really big thing, obviously, once you get into that wet stuff. I've never had a parvo issue. Even when I was up in the Northern Territory, where I had my dogs there was a lot of parvo, but I just rigorously did the 12-month or 6-month booster for the parvo up there. Where I'm at now, I actually haven't done a parvo shot on any of my older dogs or my breeding bitches since I've been here. All my dogs are up on kennels, so we do have, probably a bit like the snakes down there. It's the brown snakes, highly venomous. Don't see too many of them, but I've got all my dogs are in a big undercover shed. So it was shed with fans and they're all up on kennels. So that my working shed with all my machinery and stuff beside it, and you can see the brown snake skins and stuff in there. The snakes are there. Just keep them up on kennels. Keeping them up in kennels and cages obviously probably means you've got to let them out and run them more.
Mm-hmm.
Going other places I have set up day pens so you can let dogs out, leave them in day pens, put them back at night, that sort of stuff. Preference, I work my dogs, even the collies and the curs, to where I'm happy for them to be in a pen if they're not getting worked 24/7. If we're not doing cattle work for the collies, they still get run every day, so they still get run in the morning, they still get run at night. My curs will go for a 4K run every day, regardless if we're going out hunting or not.
Yeah.
If I know we're going hunting or working cattle, the curs and the collies are there for a purpose. They get let out of the cage, they go to their work, they do their job, and they get put back in. Leaving dogs out in day pens and that sort of stuff, I know it's great. It's probably a good mental thing for yourself, but is it ideal for the dogs to be sitting out, unmanaged during the day, if you know what I mean? To me, that's another bit of a control thing that you may lose some of that control. So I will do it for younger pups, anything under sort of 12 months and all that sort of stuff. But once my dogs get old enough in a cage, they go and do their job, they go back home.
Yeah.
Training them up, I will also chain them up. So I have specific spots where, I want to leave that bitch out for a day so you can get chained up on a chain. They all get trained to be on a chain as pups. Everything I sell gets trained to go onto a chain, and respect that, because that's a really big thing, to be able to put them on a chain, tether them out, walk up to them. They sit, or they don't jump and bounce all over you when you come to them. There's that respect that you are the boss, you're the dominant one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit here on a chain and wait to be released.
That's right.
So, for me, I call it the drive-in dog cage. So I can just drive through my kennels, I can load anything onto the back of the ute, back of the buggy, go and do the work, bring them back, put them back in. Because they're up in them pens, just means I've got to run them a bit more, and I've got to clean out the pen. I'll get them out in the morning, so I don't have to clean the pens as much, and they go out of an afternoon. If you miss a couple of days, just a job cleaning out pens,
Yes.
Worms.
Worm.
Yeah, the worms are I just rigorously stick with. There's a lot of things you can do for worms and ticks and fleas. I haven't had fleas for years. Ever since I've been here, I've been on this one property for 10 years. I haven't had fleas. We don't, look, the little roo ticks, kangaroo ticks and stuff may get on your dogs every now and then, but not very often. Once you get them up off the ground and they don't survive, they're not in the dirt around your kennels. So I just stick with a Dectomax cattle injection every 6 weeks, and that's it. Okay. Nothing else. I know that apparently it does the heartworm and a few other things. And there's only one other type of worm that it doesn't do. And I think if you need to do that, you just need something with that Prosi-Quantul, or Drontul or something like that. You just need that active, and you can put that in every now and then, maybe twice a year or something like that. So I'll do me pups at 6 weeks old with Dectomax. Doesn't hurt them if you give them the right dosage, and it's cheap. I've got it on hand all year for doing cattle work anyway. So
good deal. What kind of dog food do you feed? Like what kind of, like a ratio as far as like a 24-20 or 28-20 or?
No, I listened to a podcast about some of that dog food over in the US the other day where you talk about like the protein levels and protein and energy levels and all that sort of stuff. And for us, to me, it's more coming from a reputable. So I just feed a lot of dry biscuits, obviously. Yeah. And then a lot of stuff. So I will generally just, maybe every second or third month, kill a beast that's, not sellable. It'll have something wrong, broken, or might have hurt its leg and it's healed, or it's a bit sickly or something like that, and it's finally healed up or something like that. And I'll have a lot of meat and a lot of bones in the freezer. So bones are obviously a big thing. But as far as the dog food, there's a couple of good brands here that stick with really good high quality brands that have a bit of roux meat in it, proteins up around 24%, something like that. But I find the heavier protein and energy you go, even though I'm running the dogs 4 day, 4K a day, they just get too fat. Like it's a really hard line for me here to keep a dog in condition during summer. You do a lot of work. They're actually out in the kennels and it's hot of a night and a lot of mosquitoes. Even the Dectomax injectable will keep a lot of the biting insects off them. But they're sort of up all night with the mosquitoes and stuff, so they're burning energy. So you're sort of giving them a bit to keep them, keep a bit of condition on them. Come winter, it's cold. All my kennels are open, open kennels under a shed. I don't rug my dogs or put coats on my dogs. My cousin down in Tamworth has to, they get that cold. But mine will lose a lot of condition, shaking and keeping that burning that energy, burning that fat of a night to stay warm. But the dry dog biscuits with high protein and all that can very quickly make dogs fat and useless in my opinion. So mine go for maybe 100 to 150 grams each, 200 grams each a day of the dry food. Yeah. And then they're sort of always got bones available. And, any sort of meat scraps and that I sort of have here, steak leftovers and all that sort of stuff all goes together. Yeah. I will buy a bit of fat, a bit of oil and used oil and stuff from every now and then to put on the biscuits, and that adds a bit of energy. Shines the coats up a bit, but I don't specifically go out looking for a specific protein level. I know the product that I get now is about 24% protein. Energy, I just couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but the amount that I give them keeps them. You want to be able to see that little bit of rib, don't you reckon? Like, you've got to see that bit of rib and a bit of hip, and they've got to be in work condition. You don't want them too poor, but you just don't want that. You don't want that fat on them either, because they just can't do the dishes. They can't do the stamina. So, but I did find it interesting. Just some of the podcasts I have heard about how you guys sort of work on the 24/20 or these the protein and energy levels and what it does take to maintain a dog. Well, I think everyone, yourself, like how much you got to feed of a certain product to maintain it to the level that you want.
We add so much stuff. It's very similar to what you do. There during the summer, we'll feed a lot of meat, a lot of bones, and kibble, dry food. And in the wintertime, we do the same thing, but we have a big stock pot, and we'll cook it down and make a broth and give them a warm, a little warm meal and stuff like that. But mainly keeping the dog healthy. If the dog is healthy, it doesn't take a lot of food to keep it maintained, because I don't want my dog fat at all. Like you said, I don't want to see their backbone, but their hip points, you want to see just a bit. And then the last couple of ribs, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, our border collies get worked pretty hard when we're doing our mustering and there's a lot of cattle work.
Yeah.
And there's this conception you've got to feed a dog every night.
No.
For it to be healthy and happy. That is not, in my opinion, that's not true.
No.
Like a dog can go a couple of days, with the right diet and everything, he can go a couple of days, bit of hard work. He can go a day or two without a food. Like they're out, wild dogs are out there doing it anyway. Like we all know that.
That's right.
And if you go and work your dogs hard and they miss a night and they fast, I can nearly guarantee your dogs will be better the next day.
Yes.
Yes.
We are getting a very, very bad thunderstorm right now, so I'm hoping we don't lose power.
Right.
Like it just
is that thunder in the background?
Yeah, it just like blew in here. The lights are flickering on and off right now, so yeah, we might need to wrap this one up, Baden, so that way we don't lose the power.
No, it's all good.
And I mean, we can always do another one, a second part. That's for. I really want to do that. Just some good stories, some good yarns.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm a bit like you, Joey. I can probably talk mouthful of marbles underwater if it's all about dogs and having a bit of fun.
That's right, man. Well, listen, I'm glad you got on here this time. Like I said, for our listeners out there, I hate that we got to cut it short, but it's lightning and popping, and I don't want to mess all this stuff up.
Yeah.
And but Baden, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. It was great to meet you when you were here, and we really look forward for when you come back. We're going to hang out some. We're going to go hunt.
Most definitely.
Definitely. I'll hopefully be there 2026. Don't hold me to that one. 2027's a goer.
Yes.
And definitely want to catch up. That was a great time at Earl's.
Yes,
Met
sir.
you guys, mate. We had fun. That's what it's all about.
Most definitely.
Well, tell your cousin that we'll have a bunch of redneck shit to do.
Oh yes.
Definitely. He's like, I'm gonna do Earl's once in my life. That's it. I'm never. That's my thing. I'm just gonna do it once. Anyway, we got back on the plane on the way, and he goes, I think I'm going to go again.
Yeah.
I'll be there in 2027.
He was having a good time. He was. You could tell. So, all right, my man.
No, appreciate it. Appreciate being able to be on. And, it's just great talking about dogs and having fun.
Oh, yeah. We'll have you back on for sure.
Yeah, we'll get it set up. We'll do another one. That's for sure. So, I appreciate you.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Joey. Thanks, mate.
All right. Later, mate.
Peace.
All right, man, I've been waiting on that for a while. This freaking storm's going, y'all. We really got to cut it short. Thanks for listening. We love y'all. We appreciate it. And we're going to get away from this lightning and stuff. I can get these headphones off my head. So see ya.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed that episode. If there's anything or anyone you'd like to hear on the podcast, or if you'd like to come hunt with us, don't hesitate to contact us at dixiedoggers01@gmail.com.